morning to the delegates online and morning to the colleagues here in the room. Thank you. So my topic for today will be on the industrial water efficiency. And thank you to Lindani because he has already set the tone for this guide. It has been developed in order to assist industries to streamline their water efficiency assessments. Here, the focus was actually facilitating or creating facility champions. A quick rundown on the discussion points. I'll give a background on the water governance in South Africa, the water management strategy, and also the principles to water management. Maybe a little bit more detailed. I know that Brent has said that I've got 15, 20 minutes. I'll try to stick within that on the approach to water use assessment and also some intervention points. Now, you'll appreciate that facilities or industrial facilities are different. They are diverse in terms of how they are laid out. So there isn't any really common or unified strategy which you'll work with. But the idea was that let's develop a tool which you can use as the foundation, and water facility champions will be able then to use it to standardize within their operations. In terms of the water use in South Africa, it is governed by the National Water Act, of which the Department of Water and Sanitation is the custodian. So that being said, any abstraction, whether from a municipal line, from a spring, from a borehole, needs to be registered and needs to be registered with the Department of Water and Sanitation. But if you're abstracting obviously from a pipeline, then you'll actually have an account with your municipality. And the same applies with your discharge. As said earlier, the water quality is a big issue, even if the abstraction itself is not so much. But the water quality does have an impact on the water resource of South Africa. So that said, the water quality is a very big issue for industries. Not all water that they abstract can be used directly in their processes, and there are governing legislation, as I said, for instance, the Meat Safety Act for abattoir sector, and also the other acts as listed there. The list is actually not exhaustive, but that's just to indicate that there is a framework under which industries operate. A water management strategy should be the first to do for management of any organization. Now, it should actually identify water as one of the key pillars and strive for a water sustainable environment. They should actually create accountability from the management level. Now, that said, they should actually also appoint a water champion who would report to a formal position and equipped with the necessary resources, with the key performance indicators, so that a water efficient drive is implemented. Maybe quickly, the points to the principle to water management plan is that you should have metering and monitoring. You should have benchmarking of some sort, and also water reuse, recycling, and alternative water sources. Now, I've gone through many facilities, and what I realize sometimes you'll find that people are reading meters that are 15-year-old, and they are hoping to get accurate data of that. As you know, data is the new gold in the 21st century. So you cannot go by with a meter that is already depreciated so much that its value is absolute zero. Now, I want to argue any facility champion that will take this forward to look at meters as the first to go to to understand how water is being used within that facility. Now, that being said, one will have to do an overview of what is available, where the gap is, and install such. In this space, you might need to appoint service providers to assist you. And there is a gentleman coming to talk about metering and monitoring, so I will not exhaust what he's going to talk about. But essentially, metering is very important, it's very key to understand. Depending on the complexity of the facility, you might go down to unit processes. For instance, you look at cooling towers, you meter them. But when you look at the production facility, you might look at a department as a whole, or you might actually want to be interested to say, how bad are my vacuum pumps performing? Then you'll have a metering system in place for such. Then with regards to benchmarking, this one is a bit tricky because you'll find there's many publications talking about water use intensity. And water use intensity used alone can be misleading because you need to understand the age of the infrastructure that you are dealing with. You need to understand the type of technology that is being deployed in that facility. So there is nonetheless publications, for instance, from the Water Disclosure Program. There is also publications that we are working on from the NCPC, us as the CSR Water Center assisting to actually develop the guidelines so that there is more rich data available for South Africa. With regards to water reuse and recycling, this is a very important topic as well for industries. So noting that the water emanating from these facilities can be really detrimental to the water resource. It is important to reuse as much as possible. I know that it's not necessarily uh, possible to use water directly without any treatment, but technologies are now available and there is constant research, especially in membrane processes, so that you can have modular plants installed for recycling. In order to be investable nowadays, you also need to show that you are diversified in terms of your water resources. Water resources, I mentioned earlier, don't only rely on municipal water systems. Also look at what can I do in terms of rainwater harvesting. That's a good space to operate in. There's many suppliers available. Also looking at boreholes and also maybe sustainably abstracting from the river directly, especially if you're looking at being in a remote area. Now, there's basically two strategies one can follow as a water facility champion. And it all depends on what is the main objective. If it's a quick study to understand the water consumption and you want to report back to management, you can do a basic site assessment. But if the key is to address where the real issue lies within your production, then you'll go to a detailed site assessment. Now, depending on the resource available, I'm talking money, then you also choose as well. The basic site assessment is obvious, it's limited, but it's quick. And it involves mainly metering and monitoring and using also available BAT and also the BPG, which is the best practice guideline. Sorry. Now, with the detailed site assessment, here you are going for the full exhaustive list of what can be done in terms of the water for the facility. And it offers then the opportunity to the facility champion to also look at where the metering is, where the gap is, and address it once and for all. It also gives you the opportunity to implement the latest technology in terms of how data is being presented to management. For instance, nowadays it is easy to have an online platform where all your metering, given that you have got data loggers or smart meters, you're able to pull that data and adequately represent it online. That said, you'll be able to immediately avoid all the erroneous data that comes with manual recording and also Sometimes you find that when one does data input, there's also a secondary error that is being introduced. So yeah, my push obviously for industries will be as far as possible to go for a detailed site assessment. Just a quick run in terms of the actual detail. I talked about the metering and monitoring. What we have here is an example of what would have emanating from your water meters, and you would have plotted it. First of all, of course, you have your site water meters, and out of that, depending on the departments for the facility, then you can draw up and see exactly who the main users are. There's a lot of knowledge that is hidden behind a pie chart like this, because you can say, well, for the plant and crates cleaning, what really is the issue there? Is it the issue? Is it the machine that is being used for cleaning the crates? Do you need to replace it? And how much is the replacement cost? Is there a significant payback period? Obviously, money is the bottom line here. You are not in the business to actually um, um, be producing without making money. So, yes, when it comes to metering, this is the type of information to be looking at. At the same time, I've seen this in many facilities, especially with the steam lines and also with the cooling towers. You find that those lines are not necessarily maintained because those are support utilities, but there's a lot of value that one can look at in terms of actually reducing water use. Um, Now, in most cases, the maintenance and operation of the cooling towers is not really attended to, leading to a whole lot of water being lost. We use this guide here to indicate, as an example, to say, how do you then estimate your leaks in a facility? With this, we hope then to actually account for what we say in the water balance is an unaccounted for water within the facility. If you are able to do this, then you reduce that unknown significantly. So I'm not necessarily running line by line, but I hope you are able to follow and read as fast. Thank you. Now, let me try to be a little bit more detailed on this one. Here we're looking at the cooling tower, and you will immediately see that what we have is um, this cooling tower is not actually well taken care of, as you will see that there is actually solids that are accumulating on the panels, and actually that will actually allow for the water quality to deteriorate. Now, it could just be an issue of the biochemicals that are being used. It could also be the issue of the maintenance to the cooling tower. But in this case, you could also have a situation where the water, what we say, the concentration ratio is actually very small. In that case, you have an opportunity to increase your cycles of concentration, and in that case, you are able to then save water. For instance, in this particular case, we have here cycles of concentration sitting at 4, and by just increasing it to 5, you're able to then save 6% additional water. I must argue to say that this, you don't do it alone. You'll necessarily need to work with the cooling tower maintenance provider that's contracted for the facility. They will be able to then guide you through this journey, but at least you can actually initiate the discussion to say you are not happy with the performance of the cooling towers. Then you can look at strategies in terms of the management thereof. There is one issue that you cannot avoid, though, in terms of the rated capacity of the cooling tower. As mentioned, if a cooling tower, for instance, is a 3.5 kilowatt hour, then it's a given that you're going to lose about 5.5 liters of water. And that's the case. You cannot do anything about that. Of course, you could, depending on the age of the infrastructure, you could actually go for air cooled systems. And then in that case, you don't use water altogether. The options are there. It is up to the facility champion to be given an opportunity and the resources to go out there and actually explore. That said, there is obviously in terms of the best available technologies, there's workshops and webinars that one can attend to be informed well, and then there's suppliers that can come to the facility and educate then the facility champion, and he can bring in his support staff to actually share the knowledge. I think I already mentioned in terms of the sources for benchmarking, there is also the guidelines that we are developing from the Water Center, obviously working with the NCPC as the funder. Now, the other one is there is also international guidelines that are available, but I'm a bit cautious when it comes to them because what happens is the industries in the Western world are so developed that when you come and pull that data to us, we can only know of the best technology, but the benchmarking data when it comes to the water use intensity is not really that much useful. So that caution should really be applied. Um, the other thing is to note that when you are able to implement a good metering and monitoring, you are able to implement your benchmarking guides, then there's a possibility of saving as much as 27.5 in terms of your water use or your current or baseline water use. When it comes to water reuse and recycling, I've already mentioned the challenge for industries to say it is difficult to use water directly. Some form of treatment is necessary, and I show by way of this case study here for a 200 kiloliter per day plant where they implement an anaerobic membrane bioreactor, and the projected cost for this was 60 million with a running cost of 8 rand and 80 per kiloliter. In this case, the IRR was good. It's what 83%. But of course, this study was done on a high level, and there is a need when you progress. If such a project was to be uptaken, then you will need to do a pre-feasibility and all the engineering steps that are involved so that you are confident of the returns. In this particular one, they were also looking at a small generator to actually feed back electricity into the facility. This is perhaps a bit more engineering, but we're looking to say the facility champion will be equipped with the right resources, including financial, such that he or she will be able to pull the necessary resources to assist in this journey to a water efficiency or water efficient plant. Now, talking to alternative sources, I already mentioned them, rainwater harvesting being a no-brainer really. Yes, there are those areas that unfortunately they don't have as abundant rainfall, but the issue being you'll need to trade off on the capacity that you need to store for the rainwater. But once you're through that and you've done all your assessments, then you have an alternative supply from the municipality and you are demonstrating sustainability, which as the facility grows, as the organization grows, then it actually able to attract a wide array of investors. And as you know, that investors are very cautious nowadays. They don't look at businesses the same way. Another one, which I would like to argue, is actually the condensate from the air handling unit, but also looking at the boiler uh, blowdown, because yes, it is rich in salt, but if you are able to employ membrane processes, and research is ongoing in this place, you'll be able to then reuse such water in your processes and recycle as much. If you can, by some uh, means, reduce the uptake from the municipal line, then you will have achieved a good goal. Of course, you need to do your financial assessment to say what at what cost that does this come. But you will understand also that tariffs for water are going higher and higher, and the Department of Water and Sanitation is actually revising those. So opportunities for alternative technologies will now seem doable. Now, as I close off in the last 3 to 4 slides, I just want to quickly do an overview of what we have talked about. Um, we talked about the mentoring and monitoring being key. That should be the first thing that one looks at, either from a basic or from a detailed assessment. And this can be done obviously in-house, but let's say for the sake of sizing meters, get knowledge from service providers. They are the ones that actually deal with these meters. There is a wide array of meters that are available, at least in the South African market, that you can learn of and actually employ. If budget is allowing, then you can have smart meters. And I talked earlier to say you can have a dashboard which tells you how you're consuming water. You can have enough rich information on a 24-hour to know exactly at what time your facilities is being impacted, and you can actually go deeper to understand who exactly is using this water. Now, on the water balance, this is just this. We have done this for the abattoir and then confectionery as well. The water balance, yes, you could just as well put tables, but the idea is that, with pictures you're able to see a lot quicker, and actually you can baseline. Say maybe you baseline to say, here's my current situation and I want to save 10% in this area here, which is actually the actual process. The others being the utilities, the wash bay, and the boiler. So what you'll need to do is you zoom in here to say, in this manufacturing, if I look at the different departments, the process units, what exactly is happening? You know, vacuum pumps use a whole lot of water as well. Maybe you can decide to go for alternatives in that area. Then you are able to save water. You can say to management, I'm going to save 10% there. And with that money that is being saved, we're going to invest it in the meantime. So that's just an example. Coming to the targets, I think I already talked about it as part of the water balance ahead of myself there, but it's necessary to say you need to know for your production process what are the technologies that are being employed by others. Don't work in a silo. Look at technology suppliers, look at your competitors. That's what we all do. Look at your competitors, look at what is being touted as the best practice guidelines. It's there in the book, look at it. But as time goes, new processes, new technologies come. So rather also look at other options as well. I already talked to the alternative water sources. This is actually a good metric. I mentioned this 1,000 times already for green strategy. If you want to increase your value, your potential for investment, you will want to invest time in alternative technology. And it does help you should you face situations where the municipality is unable to supply you with water. We have a situation in South Africa where wastewater treatment plants are deteriorated, some of the water treatment plants are unfortunately not meeting their capacity, and the water being produced is not desirable. So if possible, if financially it makes sense, you might just as well look at alternatives. So that's that, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhulani. That was a very informative presentation that you delivered. While I just get ready to introduce the third speaker, we can perhaps just get ready the first page of the third presentation, um, Mr. IT Specialist. Yes, as indicated by Rulani's presentation and by Landani's presentation, there's this concept of water management that is very important, and the concept of metering, which is one of the pillars of water management, and also the water assessment. So I've been part of the industrial energy efficiency project for 5 years, and the latter 5 years I've been part of the industrial water efficiency project. And in the first 5 years, when we were doing work in industry, there was this dire and big need for companies to address energy needs, to improve energy management. And at the time, there was not really that great a need for companies to address the water aspects or water side of the business. And for obvious reasons, because, excuse me, for obvious reasons, if one looks at the company's financials, then you can see that energy expenses always is a bit higher or significantly higher than that of the water in most companies, not in all. Depending if you're a very water intense company, then it's the other way around. But these days, there's the change and the shift in mind and awareness of industrial water efficiency. And we more and more and more, we are seeing and noticing that companies are calling upon NCPC in particular to come out and do water assessments. And this is really great because it shows that there's a shift in mind and shift in focus in the thematic area. Global warming is a top of mind discussion, and it's been for many, many years. It's been for many, many decades across the world. I don't know if I can be candid enough to say that as a South African population, um, and I'll get a lot of flack from people when I say this. I remember growing up that there was never this great talk about water as a teenager. And when I entered my mid 20s, I started hearing about water and climate change. And in my 30s, I became more dominant and prominent. But these days, it's top of mind now because we're seeing the effects in South Africa of climate change. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm 45 now. As a teenager on TV, we never used to see or read in the newspapers about flooding of 400 people in the province that have died because of flooding. Rainfall in provinces being provinces getting annual rainfall in a matter of hours rather than in a season or in a year, which is the case of what happened in KZN. And then also provinces reaching nearly zero water availability. I'm from Cape Town, and we reached that point, and it's terrifying to say the least, because you know that pretty soon when you open a tap, there's not going to be any water. So it's becoming an important discussion these days in our domestic lives, in industry, in schools, in universities, general lay people, professionals, consultants. It's becoming top of mind that this water thematic area is becoming significantly more important for us to understand, to address, and to learn more about. So we at the NCPC, we are doing our bit in trying to work with industries, and we do that with our assessments that we offer. We come out to the site and we sit down and we work out what are the needs, what is the manner in which we can address the problem at hand. We set up a plan of how we're going to do the assessment, and then we spend some time. It can be anywhere between 1 day to 5 days to 10 days on site. It can even be 15 days if you are extremely huge company. We can spend up to 15 days on your site just to understand your business and to see what is it like during production in full swing, and what is it like when production is on downtime, because you'll be very shocked to see what happens in companies when the engineer or the director has locked the company door on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and he goes home and everybody's enjoying the weekend. And then you, if you were looking at the billings, the municipal billings, you would see that a lot of activity is happening in terms of the resources at the company over weekends, unknowingly by the company people. And this is what we often call the base load of water usage and the base load of energy in the case of energy thematic areas. So we go in and try to address that base load, which is the amount of water that we consume in industry or at home, if all things are off and quiet and all machines are down. Yes, so with that little bit of context, it's very quiet in this particular room. I'm not sure if the topic is not exciting. I don't know if the topic is not dire. I see one hand going up. I'm feeling a little bit. Okay, that's a good one. We ask questions. I was going to say, as the facilitator of the session, if there are any burning questions, please lift up your hand. If you can't resist the desire to ask your question, you may proceed and ask your question at this point. But if you can resist the temptation, we keep it for the Q&A session. I don't have a meter to measure when you have that desire to keep it in or not. But let's go to our colleague in the middle row, Mr. Lindelani Makiza. You've got a question. If we can get a mic to you, Mr. Makiza, that would be great. Just 1 second, please.
No, it's not a burning issue or a question. The thing is, it emanates from what you just mentioned. Now, looking at the KZN and floods and stuff like that. So basically, the question revolves around. I mean, floods can be devastating. I mean, we talking of these unregular patterns, but in the water space, what is it that we are doing in terms of harvesting water? Are there any technologies that we can capitalize on?
Thank you, Mr. Makiza. So that's the first one. We've got a. Did the hand drop in front? Can we address that one? If we can just get a mic there, and then I'll come to the gentleman at the back. Remember, this is not a Q&A session. We still have a presenter. But Rotonda, we can continue with that one. I assume that is a very burning question that is coming.
Okay. Mr. Jones that said, congratulations to the NCPC for the work done to date in support of industrial water efficiency for specific industry, particularly development of various tools and guidelines that can be used to support this. I would like to bring to the attention of the NCPC that WRCS DWS have documented water and wastewater management in 18 industries in South Africa. 16 of these documents have been updated in the past 5 years, and information is quite current. I strongly believe that the gaps identified and recommendations provided in this document from a research perspective are quite useful to inform the NCPC future support to industrial operation in terms of water use efficiency, energy efficiency, and water generation. If the NCP is interested to have a look at the report, if not done, you can contact me on johnz@rrc.org.za. I think it was more of a comment than a question. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Rotondwa, and thank you to the participant for the words of encouragement and the for the invitation to make further contact with him and his organization. Yes, as you can hear, it's not just the NCPC that is doing this kind of work on its own. We always in collaboration with other stakeholders, other entities to do what it is that we do, because if we've got greater reach and greater participation, then we can do work, I think, at a better level. And we can also understand the nuances, because I don't believe that one person can know and understand everything, or one organization can specialize in one and everything. That is why we have different organizations that collaborate and form collaborations and associations. So thank you for that. There's another burning question, and after that we will end it at that burning question, and then we will go over to Mr. Pofu for his presentation. Yes, sir. You may go ahead.
Thank you. It's not really burning. I can wait until the next presentation.
While you've got the mic, sir, you might as well
Okay.
indulge us and go ahead, please.
Okay, good. Thank you. My question goes to the previous presenter with regard to compliance. So we've seen the outline of increasing water efficiency, but what about inspections in South Africa? Do you have any information on that? How often is it occurring? Is this done on a yearly basis? How much of the industries are being visited by inspectors? Because if this whole system remains voluntarily, I think, yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of risks involved in that. So if you have any information about that, I would be very interested. Thank you.
Mr. Rhulani, is he in the room? Mr. Rhulani, are you going to answer that one? Please, can we get a mic to Mr. Rhulani?
Yeah, just to get clarity, is he talking inspections from the national department?
Can we just get a, thank you for that, Rhulani. Can we just get a mic back to the, otherwise our online speakers cannot hear the conversation if we are not speaking into the mics. Please, you may join me this side.
Well, I think any inspection is important. In the first slide, you indicated that both discharge and abstraction need to be approved. So I assume together with that, there are a certain amount of standards that need to be complied to. Now, is this then verified? I mean, can a company lose its license if it's not complying to those standards? Because I can imagine this has a big influence. For example, if the first company upstream is not respecting the discharge, it will have a huge cost on the next company, because when it withdraws money from that river stream, it first of all has to clean the water in order to make it usable. And then if that company also doesn't respect then the discharge, I mean, that's a cumulative problems, which in the end will cost a lot of money to all the enterprises. So as soon as one enterprise is not really respecting standards, it has an influence on everybody living downstream. And then I'm not even talking about communities or wildlife that are dependent on that water source. So any inspection, I mean, I would be very interested to know what are the customs here in South Africa. Thank you.
Yes, my comment is limited to my knowledge. That's a disclaimer. I know of industries that have been subjected to surveillance. There's an ice cream factory, for instance, in under Ekurhuleni, that has been requested. They have, by the way, a rainwater harvesting system, but now they also have a water treatment plant, but they are not reusing the water, they're discharging the water. Their argument was that, well, we discharging cleaner, relatively so, cleaner water, and the municipality requested then for the facility to appoint a professional engineer to undertake a detailed water balance for the facility, including then the water quality that coming from the water treatment plant. So that is just one mechanism, and it's an obligation then for municipalities. But I do understand that there might be some lags coming from the call them water service providers in terms of the necessary surveillance. But in terms of the law, it is there. It is actually documented. It's something that municipalities have to do as part of their water service and as part of the discharge, whether to a sewer. There needs to be some monitoring, the samples taken, analyzed by an independent lab, and those results are shared with the municipality every now and then. Just as another case, a facility in Joburg was being fined almost 500,000 every 6 months because their water discharge was not compliant with the requirements of, call it a discharge standard into the sewer. And that's just one area where you can see that the municipality is taking action. And it's not just about the penalty. They say penalize you now, but they also tell you to say, tell us how you're going to resolve the problem and tell us what is the timeline to do such. This is not addressing all facilities in the country, but there are those municipalities that are taking action nonetheless. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rhulani. I hope that the response has been to some extent satisfied your question. If there's further discussion that we need to undertake, then we can certainly do so in the Q&A. I can see that there's nods in front in response to that question and response. So we will do that in Q&A. I also want to say that that particular question is a big question, and it has multifaceted responses that one can give to it. And I'm gonna give it my last response to that was a little bit of a whetting the appetite for the discussion for later. I went to Denmark in last month on a Danish South African water sector mission. What I've learned, one of the things I've learned from that mission, just one, if I can mention, is the culture of businesses are very different from one part of the world to the next. I've been with the NCPC for 10 years and I've been inside many, many companies to do energy work and to do water work. The common denominator in it is for me, and I'm going to be very bold in saying this, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack, but it's to get a discussion going on it. Companies in South Africa are very covert when it comes to disclosing and saying in public, we've got a problem with water quality for this and that reason. Please, can you come and help us? It is something that we almost want to keep aside and tuck under the table. And when the issue becomes so big that we are now faced with huge amounts of penalties from the municipalities and uproar from the communities on sewage that is affected and water coming through the taps is now not good quality because children are getting sick. It's only at that point that people now start mobilizing at a big level and getting whomsoever it is, engineers and politicians and all these people in to come and assist. But in my short stay in Denmark for 1 week, I've only been to about 2 to 3 companies. And I was told and I could see the culture is very different. If you've got a problem, you start, as a company owner, start detecting the first instance of a problem for water. There will be that immediate email that will go through between that company and the EPI, Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. And they have that kind of relationship that they foster between industry and the enforcers of environment for water. And you'll find those agents for water in the government or in the embassies coming out and doing some good work in the companies to address the problem. So it's an open relationship, but sometimes we find in South Africa the relationship is very closed. And we have to almost squeeze and drain out that information out of companies. But that is for later, the discussion. We can continue that. It can be an interesting discussion.